Hi, well, welcome back. Welcome back. Well, the second exam is over and done with. Hope you did well. Uh, this is Friday, the 30th, and it is 3:22 on a Friday afternoon, and I wanted to get the first lecture in for preparation for our third exam. I'm going to turn a light on here. I don't know if I need it or not. I'm not really sure that it helps all that much. But anyway, so um, I did put in the extra credit. Actually, I corrected some extra credit. I had put it in and then I realized that the way that I put it in, it was going to be added in as an extra assignment, when in reality it's not an assignment. What it is just extra credit, and so it needed to be added as extra credit rather than as an assignment. And so I wanted to make sure that that was clarified. You have had 3 opportunities for extra credit, each one 5 points. So if you have submitted the extra credit each time, you will have 15 points in extra credit. So just sort of keep that in mind. And when I put the extra credit in initially, some of you emailed me and said, oh, I did it, or, it shouldn't be going in the way that it is because it looks like it was an assignment and it was really extra credit and it's going to hurt my grade and all of this. So I was fully aware of what had happened, and I just needed time to get it in and get it corrected. So I think I've done that. So we are going to begin the next 3 chapters, and I'm not sure if the syllabus shows 3 chapters, but you have a little section of 5. I think I have 4 pages, 8 slides for the PowerPoint. I want to talk about how you take a language sample, and then we're going to move right into chapter 6. And then we'll complete 6, and then we'll have chapter 7. I want the exam to be taken before you leave the university for Thanksgiving. That's my goal. And then we can finish the next 2 chapters, 8 and 9, for the final. And I do have supplemental information that will be put on Canvas that is going to apply to the final exam. So that's sort of the plan. The test will pretty much be the same as what you've had in the past. Okay, I don't think I have anything else that I need to add. So let's get started. Chapter 5, the only thing I want to talk about is how you take a language sample. And the purpose of a language sample, what it will tell you, what it will help you do. Now, I realize that those of you who are in special education or LED or dual majors, you may not ever take a language sample, but you might. I really don't know, but I know SLPs will at some point in time. But I want you to have an understanding of the language analysis and what it does for us, because you may want to take a language sample as a regular education teacher and then try and determine where the child is struggling, where the child is having difficulty. And I want to start out by saying that expressive language is what tells us what the child knows. It's the expressive component. Now, we've talked about receptive language, and that's the information that goes in. That's what you understand. I am using expressive language right now. So expressive language skills tell us what the child knows about language. And that would make a pretty good true-false question, don't you think? I do. Um, if you don't have the information receptively, you can't share it, you can't give it, you can't talk about it expressively. You can't because you don't understand it. You don't have it. Um, you have that receptive, expressive gap. So unless you understand it receptively, you'll not be able to tell us what it is. You won't be able to express it. So the purpose of a language sample is it will help you document skills at a particular point in time. It helps you compare the child in your classroom to their peers or to developmental norms. And that's what it's all about, comparing the child's production, the child's sample, the child's language to developmental milestones. And that's where you get into comparing the child to their peers. Now, what I want to say about developmental milestones is you may have an 8-year-old in your classroom, and the 8-year-old is struggling, maybe with vocabulary, maybe with syntax, maybe with morphology. And I say you need to know what typical development is before you can identify atypical development. So what I would do, I would go and look at some developmental milestones. What is this child supposed to do at this age? Now, the best time to do a language sample or to look at developmental milestones is the ages of 2 to 5, okay? When the language is exploding. And we know that around 2 years old, it blows up. The child has so much to talk about, and they're able to put these words together. And it's just wonderful because they're talking so much more. But if you look at a developmental milestone, well, you probably won't find one for an 8-year-old because they stop at about 5 or 6 years. Because everything the child needs to have in those 5 areas of language, pragmatics, morphology, syntax, semantics, phonology, everything that they need, they have by the time they go to school, by the time they're 5 or 6. That's why you don't see developmental checklists past the age of 5 or 6, because they're tweaking different parts of language for sure, but they're great communicators by the time they're 5 or 6. So you won't find developmental checklists. But certainly you can take a language sample, you can go and look at a developmental checklist of a child who's 6 or 5, and you can say, I need to know what kind of pronouns they should be using. I need to know what kind of morphology. Are they using past tense, present progressive? Do they understand irregular verbs? You can go and you can look. One place that you can go and look is the Communication Milestones booklet by Lingua Systems. Or there are others, but it will break down pronouns. It will break down how many words a child should have, the mean length of utterance. It gets into pragmatics. It gets into semantics. It just is really arranged very easily, and it's easy to find what you want. So, but excuse me, by the time the child is 5 or 6, They should have pretty much everything they need, but they're still refining, they're still tweaking those language skills. So you're able to see how the child is doing as compared to their peers or as compared to developmental milestones. You can document progress and outcomes of intervention. Let's say this child has been in language therapy, you have behavioral objectives written, and you can go and compare the child's progress to a language analysis to see how they have been doing and what kind of progress they're making. It will also help you know the acquisition of new language skills. Are you beginning to see some new skills come into play? Now, the language sample needs to be reliable, valid, and you have to have between 75 and 100 utterances for the analysis. You have to have a sample large enough that you can analyze it. 10 words won't get it. 75 to 100 words in a language analysis. And we're looking at morphemes, the smallest unit of meaning. We're counting morphemes to give us that mean length of utterance. The sample needs to be successive. It happens at one sitting. We're not using singing. We're not trying to decipher unintelligible speech, because unintelligible speech, you have no idea what they're saying. Is it one word? Is it 5 words? You really don't know. And also, that tells you something about phonology. That tells you something about the sound system, and if the child is having great difficulty because you can't understand what they're saying. And they should be pretty intelligible at 5 or 6, 100% intelligible. So you're going to omit unintelligible words. You as the participant, you as the person taking the language sample, don't want to talk too much. If we talk too much, they don't have an opportunity to talk. They don't need to, because we're yakking away. Now, I know that sometimes it's hard not to talk. We don't like silence. If I sat here and just looked at you, well, it is kind of, I should have dressed up. It's Halloween. I should have dressed up in a costume. What could I put on my head? I'll have my buddy. Okay, here's my little monster. Okay, how's that? Whoops, I lost his eyes. Okay, there he is. But I should have put a costume on for you. It's because if we talk too much, the child doesn't have to. That's like the child who is the youngest of 4 in a family and isn't talking, because everybody's talking for them. So why do they have to say anything? So we don't want to talk too much. And there's nothing wrong with silence. You need periods of silence within any interaction with a child, because we want to breathe and we want them to have an opportunity to talk. Do not ask too many yes and no questions. Do not ask many canned questions. Would you, could you, will you? Because you're going to probably get a no. We see that negation coming in very early in a child's development. And if you're asking yes, no questions, you're going to get a no. If you want the child to do something, tell them. You don't have to ask them, oh, would you like to sit over here? No. Would you like to put that game away and get ready for reading? No. Would you like to come inside now? No, I'm outside playing. So you see, and it's hard to not do that. We want to be respectful. But what you need to do is say, come inside now. I want you to pick up your toys, put them away, and go wash your hands. You don't want to say, can you pick that up and go and wash your hands and come to the chair? Can you do that, okay? No. No. If it's time to go sit in the chair for reading, that's what they need to do. Now, I call that being firm but gentle. And if you bring in consistency, structure, and routine, it's predictable to them. Maybe you're going to say, okay, you have 5 more minutes, and then it will be time to put the toys away, wash your hands, and come to your seat. And then, like maybe 30 seconds later, you say, okay, you have 3 more minutes. And maybe 30 seconds passes and you do, okay, it's almost time. 30 seconds passes and you say, okay, it's time to put the toys away, wash your hands, and come to your seat. So you've given them preparation for the transition. If you say, okay, you want to get up now and go wash your hands? No. Would you, or you can say, go wash your hands, okay? No. If you put okay as a tag on the end of that sentence, that's telling them, oh, I have an option. I can say no. No. You're not being mean. What you're doing is being gentle but firm. There are times when it's appropriate to ask questions, but if you want somebody to do something, it's okay. It's okay to say that. Don't be afraid to show them that you're the teacher, because you are. You want to record the language sample so that you can go back and listen to it, because you need to transcribe it. You're not transcribing it phonetically. You're writing out word for word what the child says and how they say it. That means if the child says he walked to the store, well, I think he omitted something. He omitted a morpheme at the end of walk. He walked to the store. Or it would be clearer if I said, he walked to the store yesterday. Well, what you don't want to do, your brain's going to correct that. Your brain will correct walk to walked, but you don't want to do that. He walked to the store yesterday. So what you want to do is write it down exactly as the child has said it, so that you can then analyze it and transcribe it. You will notice sound errors, wabbit, wamp, thoop, you'll notice those errors, and you have it recorded. You can go back and listen to it however many times that you want to listen to it. The purpose is to describe the child's productive language during conversation. So you need to be aware of what the child is supposed to be doing for their age. You're going to look at their grammatical structure. You're going to analyze the semantics. Isn't that what language is all about, is semantics? Now, grammar, you have to have the rules so other people know what you're talking about. But doesn't it get down to meaning? What is the child's meaning? Don't you want people to know what you mean? Well, so do little ones. So do little ones. So you're going to count the number of words spoken in each utterance, which means we're going to count morphemes. And we are going to total the morpheme count, and we're going to then do some division, and we're going to come up with the mean length of utterance. And that's the MLU, mean length of utterance. The MLU is most valuable for children between 2 and 5, or up to an average of 5 morphemes with grammatical forms, when grammatical forms are developing. To finish up 5, I just said this. Meaning is the crux, is the center of language. Now, if you have very few words, you're going to have very little grammar, because you don't have enough words to put a sample together. You have to have about 50 words in your vocabulary before you start putting them together. And so with this analysis, you suspect that there's a delay. You suspect that something is off, Something isn't quite right. So when they have 75 to 100 words, you can do this analysis, and you can analyze it, and it will give you valuable information. There are your goals right there. The child's social meaning will develop over time. The more words they have, the better able they are to share information, to get their message across. We know that pragmatics will increase with age and language abilities. Um, I went to a friend's house, and a lady came in with her child, and her child was maybe 10 or 12. And the child came in, and the woman had never met the child. The child had never been to this house. The child came in, immediately went upstairs in this woman's home, and started going through her closets. So I'm standing there thinking, well, I'm not so sure that's a good thing, and probably shouldn't be doing that. And is somebody going to say anything? Mother didn't say a word. Oh, he's just curious. No, that's pragmatics, and that was inappropriate pragmatics. Well, what I learned was this child is on the autism spectrum, Asperger's, which we know the DSM-5 doesn't recognize anymore. But we have to teach pragmatics to kids. And when kids get to school, that's where pragmatics really come into play, because there are rules in school. You raise your hand, you stand in line, you don't hit your friend. There are lots of rules in school. We have to teach pragmatics to some of our kids who don't seem to get it. Now, this mother should have been teaching pragmatics to this child. They don't get it. They don't see that there's anything wrong with it. They want to go do it, so why not go do it? Well, it's inappropriate. It could get you into trouble. Things that you think are okay can get you into trouble. A friend of mine years ago, her son was high functioning autistic, and he could drive a car, and he was going to the prom. He rehearsed and worked on what to say and how to say it to invite this girl to go to the prom. And I think some kids were just messing around and kidding, and there had been a movie they'd watched. Well, I think there was an inappropriate approach to this girl. He didn't mean anything inappropriate by it at all. He just didn't understand the social ramifications of his behavior. Now, his mother was trying to teach him. His mother was trying to work through the steps of appropriate social behavior. It's hard enough when you're a teenager, when you're an adolescent, and you're not on the spectrum, let alone one of your primary deficits being pragmatics. And so we have to teach those pragmatics. Okay, now we're going to start chapter 6. Okay. Chapter 6 is going to be a continuation of Brown's syntactical development. And I'm going to start with just a little review here from the end of chapter 4. Brown's stage of syntactical development. It is widely used, widely accepted, and respected. And it's talking about the development of grammar or syntax, and there are 5 major stages. Now in chapter 4, we only reviewed the first one. And the first one was semantic roles and grammatic relations. Now, poor grammar, poor syntax impacts semantics or meaning. So they kind of work together, semantics and grammar. We're looking in stage 1 at 12 to 26 months, and so the mean length of utterance is 1 morpheme to 2 morphemes. Okay, now keep in mind, here we are, 12 months, 1 year, 1 morpheme, to 26 months, just a little over 2, and 2 morphemes. They go together, okay? It's not a coincidence. Stage 2, grammatical morphemes and the modulation of meaning. Do you remember what the modulation of meaning is? In stage 2, Brown says, oh, it's going to be in my next paper. Brown suggests the greatest change in stage 2 is called modulation of meaning. Modulation of meaning occurs as a result of the use of grammatical morphemes. It's modulating, it's changing something. You can change a noun to a verb. Button, button, buttoning. You can make your point clearer. You can express yourself more explicitly. You can get your message across much easier with morphemes. Morphemes, prefixes, and suffixes. A child is really beginning to learn a lot about morphology when they learn to read, when someone reads to them, when someone points out words to them. Morphology it's kicking things off. Modulation of meaning. So stage 2 is 27 to 30 months, and the mean length of utterance is 2 morphemes to 2.5 morphemes. Stage 3 is modalities of simple sentences. Stage 4 is embedding of one sentence within another. That's 35 to 40 months. They're not even 4 years old. And they're embedding sentences. The brain is fabulous. The plasticity, the flexibility at 4, or not even 4. Chapter 5, coordination of simple sentences. So as we move into stage 2 and chapter 6, language development through the preschool years. We're going into preschool. So I just mentioned to you that Brown suggests the greatest change in stage 2 is called modulation of meaning. We can change plurals. We can add ing. It's endless as to what we can do. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail about verbs and nouns and possessives. That's more like a grammar class, and that's, in my opinion, that's not what this is. So I'm going to get into more of the meat, I think, of the language. But I mean, those developmental stages are certainly worth reviewing and looking at if you're interested. Developmental morphemes continue to develop. They continue to grow and progress as the child goes through the other stages. All morphemes begin to emerge during the later months of stage 1 and throughout stage 2. And as the child begins to master those morphemes, they begin to overextend and to generalize. And we know all about goad, man, man's, not possessive, 3 mans. I'm confusing myself. So rather than men, so those are some of the irregulars. Children begin to use pronouns in stage 1, but they may not be mastered until the age of 5. It's like almost everything else that we've talked about. The progression, the process, the maturation that takes place. Now, what about if you were going to do an observation in a classroom, and you walk in, and there's always one little booger who comes up and says, just talks and says all kinds of things. And they come up and they say, my dad bought it. And you're going, oh, wow. Well, what is it? What's the problem with that? What is the problem for you with that? My dad bought it. Bought what? You have no idea what the dad bought. So that's called anaphoric reference. The child must learn to establish what the topic is. You need to know the topic. Otherwise, it's hard for you to say anything, to cue, to keep the conversation going, to get a little dialogue or some turn taking. You need to know what the topic is. So you kind of stand there bewildered, and you haven't you ever done this? Oh yeah, really? Oh wow, that's great. Oh, I bet you're so happy about that, and you have no idea what that child is talking about because you don't know the topic. And if they have articulation errors, the intelligibility may not be good. So let's say that you've carried on this conversation, and you know that his daddy bought a new truck, and you go back the next day, and you're going to do a little more observation, and the child says he bought a blue one, and you say, oh, his truck, he bought a blue truck. Wow, that's really cool. An anaphoric reference helps us keep the conversation going. It helps us to kind of put those ideas together so we know what's being talked about. And we can kind of predict some context or some words that the child might be using. We know that not all children go through these stages at the same time, and if they don't, it's okay. What's more important is that they will catch up. In stages 2 and 3 of Brown's syntactical development, we know that the combination of words are more recognizable as sentences. They're beginning to sound more like sentences, but they're phrases. Many times they're phrases, and keep in mind, a phrase doesn't have a subject and a predicate. That's why it's a phrase. It's not a sentence. It does not have a subject and a predicate. There are two different kinds of phrases, noun phrases and verb phrases. We're not really going to get into that. By late stage 1, we've got some negation going on. No. We've talked already a little bit about yes-no questions and avoiding those yes-no questions. You might anticipate, or you might be able to guess, one of the first words that WH words that a child might use or might understand is certainly not when. When comes a little bit later. And the reason when comes a little bit later is because it deals with time. And our kiddos, little ones, in one of those stages, they don't understand time just yet. So, you know, last week, next year, yesterday, they might not even understand tonight. 5 minutes is what to them? So be careful with those when questions. Until the child is about 2, he will interpret most WH questions as where. Because sometimes it will say, where's mommy? Where's daddy? Where did you go on vacation? The what question, they hear a lot. What are you doing? What would you like for lunch? What is your name? They hear that one a lot. What is your name? How is another one that's difficult for our kids. Excuse me, I get dry. How? I can remember the first time I saw a child interact with an adult, and the adult said, what is your name? And the child kind of proudly stood there and said his name. And the adult then said, well, how old are you? And the child stopped. And you could tell the body language, and we've talked about body language as communication. I could see it. His eyes are beginning to kind of dart around. And he says his name again. I didn't ask you what your name was. I said, how old are you? And he still stood there, and he paused, and he waited, and he still couldn't answer. How is more challenging. It's a little more abstract. But I vividly remember that. And it was so true that it's just too difficult, and when questions are too difficult. When the child begins to put two words together, the vocabulary grows rapidly. You've heard me say that. Listen to this. This is a good question for a test. Between 18 months and 6 years, the child adds an average of 9 new words every day. Between 18 months and 6 years, the child adds an average of 9 new words every day. Do you add 9 new words every day? I don't. I'm fighting to not lose 9 new words every day. As you get older, the memory isn't what it used to be, let me tell you. So every night I work the crossword puzzle. And if there's a word I don't know, I look it up in my dictionary, not on my phone. I get out this book. Oh, and I can show you right here, right here. Here's my dictionary. This is my little compact dictionary. I have a great big hardback dictionary at home. And then I also have my medical dictionary. Oh my gosh, I love my books. I do. I love my books. But I look it up to continue to stimulate my mind and to learn new words. But I don't learn 9 new words every day. By the age of 6, he may have a comprehension vocabulary 14,000 words. Look at that. Is it coming into? There it is. By age 6, he may have a comprehension vocabulary of 14,000 words. The child at 24 months has about 200 to 300 words in their expressive vocabulary. One contributing factor to this is fast mapping. Remember from chapter 4, I believe, we talked about for the child who has a language delay, one thing that's really helpful is that fast mapping. You talk about words in categories, in groups, similar features, that fast mapping, and that really, really, really helps those kiddos. The child in stage 2 is beginning to have a cognitive grasp of emotionality. You're crying and he comes over, oh, you okay? They want to look in your face and they get in there real close. And oh, they feel it. They feel it. Are you okay? Don't cry. They're identifying their own emotions and the emotions of others, and it's pretty sweet. They're beginning to use the word please, and we teach that one, don't we? We sure do. The most significant change in stage 2 is that the child is talking more. Now, we also know that in stage 2, according to Brown, modulation of meaning is also very important, but without modulation of meaning, they couldn't talk more. So you see how they work hand in hand. They're using fewer nonverbal responses. The responses are more elaborate and meaningful. They're able to talk about new topics, and they're beginning to take turns. Now, they're still a little egocentric, but they're able to carry on some conversations, and they're able to maintain a conversation for a little while. The primary way that they maintain a conversation is to repeat something. I remember talking to my grandson one time, and I asked him something about his daddy. Did his daddy do something? I can't even remember the question. And I remember him standing there. Remember the example I gave you of the child who someone said, how old are you? And they stood there and kind of looked around, and you could tell, the wheels are turning, and the child couldn't answer the question. Well, he couldn't answer it. and he was thinking, and he was thinking, and you could hear, and I could tell he's kind of mouthing the words, and he never could he was repeating it silently, but he could never really answer it. And so the conversation didn't go very far. In stage 3, the child repairs the conversation by changing words. So what they do is they'll say something and you don't understand. Maybe it's that anaphoric reference, or you just can't follow it, or you don't understand all of it. And you might say, well, tell me more about that. I'm sorry, I'm not getting it. And then they'll say it a different way. So in stage 2, they will repeat. In stage 3, they're changing the words. They know that you didn't get it. And as they grow and mature and language continues to flourish and they're adding words, they'll begin to have more success with giving you that information. They're still interrupting conversations. That's that egocentric thing, hey, I'm here and I'm the center of the universe. Hopefully that goes away. Sometimes it never does. But one thing too that bothers me is they're not going to ask for clarification. They know they didn't get the message across, and they maybe feel bad about that. They don't know what else to say, whatever, but they will not ask sometimes for clarification. It's like the kids sitting in the classroom and they won't raise their hand and ask for help. Why not? I don't know. I don't know. So that's a part of chapter 6 that takes us up to narratives, which according to my PowerPoint is on page 95, or yeah, let me get that up there. Whoops, there it is, 95, and we're going to start with, in the next lecture, we're going to start with narratives. So this is the first lecture as we move into material for the 3rd exam. We have been through chapter 10, chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4. We got through just that brief information about the language analysis, the language sample, and now we're moving into chapter 6. And for the next lecture, we are going to begin with narratives. I hope you have a nice weekend. I'm sitting in my office looking out the window, and the sky is blue and puffy clouds. It's a little windy. It's not raining. That's kind of a good thing. And it's supposed to be cool this weekend, but I don't think it's going to be a bad weekend. So take advantage of the nice weather. Won't be long, and snow will be flying. All right. Have a good weekend. Bye.